Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another Shapes 2 video. Today, I'm excited because we will be starting to work with trains. Now, we've already unlocked Module 4 and the side tasks associated with it. And when I say unlocked, I mean we've completed it. And this is where we left off last video. So if you guys remember, we had these three shapes running and we had it going in like so and like so. We had all three of those running in, and as they've been completed, I've just taken that off and then I've taken that out. So we're just left with that. And now we've unlocked number 15, Hexagonals. And maybe we might start on one more, but this episode will be focusing on the next milestone. So now we get to unlock trains. Let's go ahead and do that. Now this will give us a quick overview of what's possible. So trains in this game are basically just mass transport units. And they're convenient for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, because they can be used to transport large amounts of shapes and liquids, but also because these tracks that they run along do not count towards your platform limit. Now, we haven't encountered any problems with that yet, because we have plenty of platforms available, but if you want to build big and go throughout the galaxy, you're going to run into that problem pretty quick without making use of these trains. We've got some more tasks that are now unlocked, and of course new upgrades associated with the trains here. So here we've got some more tutorials associated with the trains and things that you can unlock with them. But we won't go into that too much. Okay. So first things first, let me clear out our workspace, because it's getting a bit convoluted again. And I'll get back to you guys in just a moment. There we are. Now we've got a much clearer workspace to start with. Now, it's not necessary that we'll need trains straight away to perform this, but we're having a look at this last structure here, and the count jumps up to 30,000. That's a big jump up from this shape here, which I'm not entirely sure how much was required. Maybe it was close to that. I'm not actually sure. In any case, it's another big jump. So we will be focusing on creating a bit of just a small train network here, so that we can easily produce all sorts of shapes. Now, for this hexagonal series, as far as I'm aware, there's only, if we separate these shapes into their individual pieces, there's only three different types. So there's a teardrop, there's the triangle, and then let's see if I can find it over here. There's that indented triangle as well. Which means if we were just to collect full shapes, we would only need 3. So we may set up trains with just the 3 shape cargo wagons attached. But before we jump into that, let's go ahead and unlock the 3rd floor. And that's going to mean go ahead here into our hub and go up to the 2nd floor and copy all of this. We can now add, pressing E to go up to the 3rd floor now, a 3rd floor. You can see here we now have 12 belts coming from each direction. And with that unlocked, we can jump into our miners. So let's go ahead and copy one of these and look for a full shape. There we go, there's one over here. We can paste that in. And instead of having it kind of set up like a bit of a T shape, I'm going to opt to chain these extenders instead to make it more easy to replicate, like so. Another thing that we'll be changing up is how these shapes are distributed. So currently all 3 of these, 1, 2, 3, they're all being distributed onto the bottom level, and we don't want that. We want to make the most of each of the levels, and this is because to make maximum use of both our space belts and our train loading, because our trains are able to load on and unload on all 3 levels. So let's take a quick look at this and redesign. Maybe we'll just remove that. Redesign this extractor so that each of these 4 modules will be split into 3 and then go into their respective lanes. And if that doesn't make sense just yet, I hope it will soon once we do this manually. So if you create a belt like so, that's going to automatically split it evenly into those 3 lanes. It's important that you get that input belt in the middle, as opposed to, say, if you put it on the side here. If that was the case, then that distribution would not be even anymore, because 50% would go down into this first lane, 25% would go down into the second lane, and then 25 would go into that third lane. So that's not an even distribution, which is why it's important to have that input down the middle and have it split like so, like a fork. So we've got this split here. This right hand one can just go straight into that first layer, and moving out, we've got the second split here. We'll bring it up 1 and throw that out the second level, and then this third split we can bring it up to the newly unlocked 3rd level and send it out there. So this 4 miners will be evenly split into each of the levels on the far left here. So what does that mean? This belt is fully saturated, but now that it's split into 3 ways, each of these belts is now only 1/3 saturated, or 33%. So that means if we wanted a fully saturated belt on each level, if we scroll out here, we'll need 3 lots of these miners. And then what they can do is they can all combine like so. And then if they're all combined, this single space belt here will have full saturation of 12 belts. Okay, so now that that explanation is out of the way, let's continue designing. So I'll design the left side here, and then just copy and paste it, flip it, rotate it, and then we'll be able to paste it on the right hand side too. So we've got fork number 1, and then we'll bring it out again into fork number 2. You see the same pattern, fork and fork. Oop. Okay, we've got to make sure that that's connected too. So this far right one is just going to the first level, that middle one is going to the second, and that left one is going up to the top. If I clear this, you guys notice that it's going to evenly distribute left, middle, right, and we'll keep doing that. There we go. So now that that's all complete, I can simply delete that, copy the whole left side, press F to flip, and then rotate twice, and then replace. And now that should fill out the same way. Now evenly distributed. Perfect. Now of course, these 2 extractions are now incorrect. That's a cool animation. So you're going to copy this one over and join these up. So these are now all the newly built extractors, evenly distributing each of them into each layer. So before we go any further, I'd like to save just a single column with the even split as a blueprint, like so. And then the blueprint that I'll probably use more often is going to be this next one that we'll do in just a second. So with the trains, we need to use loaders and unloaders. So this here that I've just placed is a shape loader. So it is fed from above and it stores these shapes into their respective levels. And a train is able to then pick up these shapes once it stops along this track here, which you don't yet have, so let me just place that. And then we'll also need a train stop tell the train to stop and load this up. So we've got our first package. So this loader here acts as like a converter. Think of these as 3 big cargo boxes, one on each level, and they're being filled up with these little shapes, and then once they're full, they'll be placed onto this conveyor belt, ready to be picked up by a train that comes past. So let's go ahead and grab all of this, including the train loader, and we'll save that as another blueprint. And that'll be titled Miner and Train Loader. And we can use that again and again with the other various shapes that we encounter. Okay, so I've had a quick think about which shape I'd like to go in the first cargo hold, and I've just had a look back over the different milestones. We'll just go with the order in which they're revealed. So we'll have the triangles first, then we'll have the stars, and then finally the teardrops. So this shape here is the triangles, so we want them on the first carriage, which means we'll put the stop here. Now before we get too much further along, let's go ahead and make a train so we can visualize what we're doing here. So you start off with just the red train variant, which we can put at the end of our track here, and then that should spawn the train for us. Or not. Maybe it needs at least one wagon first. In any case, that's what we want. We'll throw a wagon on. There we go. Okay. Beautiful. So it's just picked up those first 3 cargoes. And this little train stopper here is telling that to stop briefly. And when a train stops, it'll automatically load anything into an empty slot of that category. So because we want this shape on that first cargo, we've told it to stop immediately after the loader. So let's add a couple of extra cargo slots to this train here. We'll go here to wagons, and here to shape wagon, and add 2 more. And because we've altered the train, it's now reset. So it's disappeared from the track, and it should be coming up. There we go. So it's still using just that first wagon there to load up, and it's not using the other 2, which is what we want, because we want this train to be able to carry all 3 of the full shapes, 1 in each of its slots here. So that's just for demonstrative purposes. It's done a good job. So let's see if we can't find some other full shapes of different sorts. We've got one just up here as well. So let's jump back down and go into our hexagonal blueprints and platforms, and we're looking for the miner and train loader. Select that, and we can very simply place that down, and all of a sudden we've got this shape producing 12 full belts, which is then going straight into a train loader and starting to stack up that cargo. Beautiful. Now, as we've discussed just previously, we want these indented triangles to be our second shape and to go in the second storage. So for that to occur, we'll need another stop, but instead of placing it directly after the loader, we'll place it one tile further to the right. So when our train comes, the engine is going to stop here. The first cargo is going to stop here, carrying that hexagon consisting of triangles, and then the second cargo slot will be filled up with these indented triangle hexagonal shape. Wait, okay, so that settles that. That's now ready for a train to come on by and pick up. Now we're just looking for the teardrop shape. So let's zoom back out and see if we can find, perfect, just up here. So let's go ahead and zoom in on here, Control V to place that train loader again, and this time we want the train stop not immediately to the right, nor one extra to the right, but a third tile to the right. We can add another rail, which means cargo 1 is going to be here, cargo 2 is going to be here, and the third train cargo will end up being stopped here and loaded into with the teardrop shape. And there we have it. And since we're out this way, I've spotted 2 more islands of full shapes, so we can actually use these 3 to conveniently connect up a train so it's fully loaded, and then just send it all the way down close to our hub. So why don't we go ahead and do that. Now, as we can see here, we've gone ahead and created 3 separate mining stations for each of these different shapes, and just connected up the one train line, and importantly changed the placement of the train stop to correlate with the correct carriage loading. So this shape is 2 tiles away, teardrop is 3 tiles, and then if we come over here, this first shape is only 1 tile to the right. So let's go ahead and place our shapes train on this track. First placing an engine, and then placing 3 wagons behind it. And if we would like more trains to go along the same track in the future, we can simply Control C and paste and then connect them up with rails, not with belts. We now have 3 engines, 3 trains should I say, going along this one track. So as long as our miners can keep up, we'll be just delivering 3 times as much shapes to the end result when we eventually get there. There we go. We see our trains now have all 3 cargoes filled with different shapes. And because this is currently the end of the track, they just loop back around, go back to where they first began, and start again. like so. So if where we set up to deliver is full and they can't unload, they'll just come back around and do the same loop again. So we'll leave these as is for now, and we'll work on our painting trains. So I see we've got all three different colors that we need. Let's go ahead and do something similar with painting. First we'll find our original design. We'll copy that just to show you guys that's what it looks like. Just using the first layer here. We'll zoom out and we'll start with this red island. We're pasting that design, and like before, we're going to chain the extractors instead. And we'll also redesign the paint extractor so that they're coming out all 12 of the potential slots rather than just the bottom 4. Now, the fluid design doesn't need to be balanced in the same way that the shape belts are, because of the fluid throughput of the pipes is much higher than the extractor rate. So one of these pipes can actually support more than 16 extractors here. So this is not currently being throttled at all. That one pipe can carry all of these extractor outputs and then some without reducing its rate at all. And we know this because it shows the throughput rate here, 7.2 thousand liters per minute, and then the extractors are at a measly 375 liters per minute. So if we divide 7.2 thousand by 375, we get 19.2. So that's how many extractors it can support. Now, why does any of that matter? It simply means that we don't need to split all of this evenly and individually like so and do that every time. So we don't need to do that 4 separate times for it to have a good flow through. All we need to do is connect them all up like so. So we'll bring them around, bring that around, and then connect that up. Let's rotate here. So all that's connected to 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll also go 5 across to the left and up, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're connecting that pipe out to the middle level, and then we'll go out again, up again, 1, 2, 3, 4. And there we have it. So that's the simple design. We've just connected all of the extractors up to the one pipe and then fed that pipe and snagged it up to all 16 extractors, fluid launchers. Now, although the pipe can support all 16 of these fluid pumps, that does not mean that the space pipes are at maximum capacity if we were to attach one, like so. They're capable of throughputing 9,000 which is even more than 1. So we're dividing it into 16, but even if we just did 1, it still wouldn't be max throughput, because just this one pipe alone, with 12 of these fluid pumps connected to it, is producing 4.5 thousand, which is half of the fluid throughput limit for one of these pipes. We can see it's times 12, so that's for each individual pipe. It's 9,000. But we won't be doing that. Let's undo that and put that design back in. So what does this mean for us? If my math is correct, that means for one fluid pipe, you can connect up to 16 of these extractors, and that would not throttle at all. That's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you then went ahead and copied it again and found another island and put it all into the one pipe, just turn that over here as well, and then over here again. Anyway, it would not get backed up, and these extractors would all be producing at 100%, so long as you're using that much liquid. In any case, we won't be doing that, but it's good to know, it's important to know. What's a more important ratio though is how much paint we'll need per full belt of shapes. And to work that out, I'm just going to jump here onto this little island, put out one painter. So we need 4 of these bad boys per one full belt of shape. Okay, that's helpful. I've just noticed a flaw in my calculations. Although a pipe can support a heap of paint, if you just attach it to the one fluid launcher, that's going to throttle it considerably, because it can only support 1.5 thousand liters. So we actually would not be able to delete all of that and just have it going through the one, because that fluid launcher would throttle everything else. The pipe wouldn't, but the launcher would. So apologies for that misinformation. There we are. But we're not doing that design anyway, so that is not going to bother us. Okay. So it looks like the painter here has the same ratio of shapes as it does for paint. So I'm assuming that means if we just have 3 extractors of paint and you funnel them both in together, then that's gonna be an equal amount of paint to shape ratio. So as we did before with the shape extractor, we're first going to save just one line and simply save it as paint pump in platforms, and then we'll go to our trains tab down the bottom here and looking at interesting, that's not currently unlocked. Let's have a look at upgrades. How expensive Ah, fantastic. Oh, wait. No, I need both, don't I? Oh, wait, no, I don't. Don't need the filler wagon, that's not what we're after. We do want the fluid wagon. Now, luckily, because we've done all those side tasks, we have just enough research points to unlock the fluid wagon. So that's going to allow us to transport our paint with trains as well. I'm very lucky that's just come under what we have. So let's unlock that so that we can use that straight away. You can find that here under wagons. Fluid wagon. Yeah, not what we want. We want the fluid loading. So connect up those three to the fluid loading and add a couple of rails for good measure. That filled up very quickly. Oh my goodness. And I think the reason why that filled up so quickly is because we had a lot of fluid stored up in those pipes. So if we hit clear and get rid of all of that and all of this, now it would fill up much more slowly because there's not a backlog held up in these space pipes. You can see now it's much more gradual. So let's take a quick look at the different colors that are unlocked. I believe it goes red, blue, green. Yeah, red first, then blue, and then green third. So let's stick with the game's order of things. So like we did with the shapes, we'll have the first color, the red color, in the first fluid wagon, which means we'll add a train stop immediately to our right. But before we do that, let's copy this whole design. We can easily paste it in our other color stations. And we'll title it Paint Pumping and Load. So load into the train. And now that we've got the basics there, we can add our train stop, add a few more tracks, and we'll look for our other two colors just up here. Go to our blueprints. And the green one, I believe we said, was the third color. So we want our train stop on the third tile. So the first cargo will be red, the second cargo will eventually be blue, and then the third fluid cargo will be filled up with the green paint. Let's go ahead and do that again over here on the blue, except we'll need to change the stop location. Red, blue, and the green will sit over here. Now let me go ahead and connect these up off camera and add a few trains in too. So here we can see all of our colors and now connected up with the track that I've just laid down. And I'll put the trains in on camera for the simple reason that we have not put the fluid wagons on before. So let's do that. We'll put 3 on like so, and then I'll add a couple of extra trains to our network and then add them up like so. Let's check this out. Train stops and it picks up the red paint. Get a second train going, doing exactly the same thing, and then the third. Let's jump over to our green station now, and they should pop into that third slot there. Perfect. The next train zooming past, doing the same thing. And then last but not least, the blue, right into the middle there. Perfect. And now we have our coloured train set up. Simple but effective. Now that we've established a very basic shapes and paint train network, let's head back to our hub and have a think about how we'd like to deliver these. So that's our paint, and these are our shapes. Got 3 trains on each line, and they're currently just looping in on themselves. And then our hub is back here. That's our initial demonstration with the train, which we don't need anymore, so let's just get rid of that. And we've got all these different old extractors of paint and shapes that I think I can comfortably simply get rid of. Let's go ahead and clear this up. There we go. Now we want a good amount of working space here so that once we have the shapes delivered and the colors, we have plenty of tiles left to combine and cut, rotate, etc. before delivering it to our hub. So let's just grab the train tracks here, and we want the shapes to be delivered up the top. So the train should come in from right to left and put the shapes maybe around about here, here. And then for the colors, we'll want the train coming up from the bottom and put the 3 colors here, and then we can draw from each of those as we wish, and then do all our factory building in here, like so. So it's better to have too much space than too little. It may mean that we're waiting a little bit longer for the final version of the shape to come into our hub because of how much space it needs to travel. But it's better to have it that way around than to have it too cramped and be having to spaghetti your way around to different islands in your factory network. That's just a nightmare. We want to avoid that if we can. So let's stick with our original plan and have plenty of space. So as I said just previously, this is going to be our shapes line, and it's going to be our paint line. Let's get this connected. I'll be back in just a moment. There we are. Now we can see our train starting to come along both of these lines here. If I just scroll out, we've simply connected the end of the shapes line up to that here next to the hub, and then the end of the paint line, we've done the same thing, connecting it all the way up here, so the paint trains come up from the bottom and deliver just here. Now of course we're yet to put in the unloaders, so we'll do that for us right here. That's important. If you delete tracks, that's fine, as long as no train is on the track as you delete it, because that will delete the train and all the cargo associated with it that it's currently carrying. And if you're short on shapes, that's an unfortunate mistake to make. So because this is the shapes line, we'll go ahead and go to our shape loading and select the unloader, and then add 3 unloaders like so. Now these aren't actually going to do anything until we tell our trains to stop. So if we put a stopper just to the left here, we should then see our trains stop and they reach the section of the track, and the cargo should line up with these unloaders, and it's going to unload all 3 shapes at a time, as you can see here. So now all of a sudden we have 3 full stacks of each shape ready to be used and belted across. And we're going to quickly see further cargo boxes be stacked up onto these conveyor belts with the other trains that are going to come past very soon. But before we do anything with this, we're going to go ahead and do the same with our paint. Cool little animation here. So these cargo boxes are stuck halfway in to the unloaders. So beautiful visual design. Okay. Now we probably want the paint unloaders about here. Let's go ahead and select that. Fluid loading, and then fluid unloader. And now that's actually going to unload the wrong direction, so we'll just press F. Now it's unloading to the right. And of course, like that, like our shapes, we will still need a stop to tell our trains to stop, so that it unloads all the liquid. And because it's coming up from the bottom, that top one is going to be red, followed by blue, and then green. Perfect. And once our trusty trains have finished unloading, they're going to loop right back around and underneath the track to pick up some more paint. And because this track is so long, see our trains are only here, 1, 2, 3. And these paint pumps are going to have plenty of time to fill back up. So let's go back here, got our 3 shapes and our 3 colors. Brilliant. Now, ladies and gentlemen, because we are now using all 3 levels filled with shapes, we're going to want to alter our blueprints. So we currently have in our new hexagonal arsenal the painter that fits on a 1x2. It's very simple, very basic, very straightforward. So it takes the 4 painting inputs on the left here and just pipes them one at a time across, and then the same thing with the shapes here, and belts that to 4 separate painters for each belt. Now, the unfortunate thing about this design is that it's already using the 2nd level with these pipes coming up above the belts here, which means we can't simply copy this whole design and then add it on the floor above, because there's going to be a lot of intersection here. So instead, what I've done is I've found an old design of either mine, or perhaps I found it long ago, and I've broken it down So that's the end result, but we won't start there. We'll start just at the very beginning on a single 1x1, and we're just painting that single belt on the left using this input from paint. The paint will come in from the left and the shapes on the top, and we'll use that paint to paint that belt. But of course we need 4 of these painters to paint one fully saturated belt. So we'll move ahead to this next island where we've done just that. So we now have these 4 painters and this one belt of shapes being split 1, 2, 3 and 4. These 2 jump across into these other 2 painters here, and then these painters are connected up via the pipe to these 4 bottom ones here. Now we obviously don't need 4 per se, but because it's so close to the left here, they will naturally connect up anyway. So that's the one belt design that's kept at the 1 level by using these jumpers rather than, for example, elevating this above and skipping over some of our design like so. Instead, we've just got the belt launches. So that's one shape belt complete, and they will exit here being painted. The next step of this design, let's pause here briefly. Okay, so the next step of this design is to put in a second belt. Now the cool thing about these painters is they can draw paint from adjacent painters, so you do not need a pipe in between these 2. You can simply connect that painter up to this painter, and as long as that painter is connected to a pipe with paint in it, both of these can use that paint. So we've got our second belt of shapes coming in, being split off into 1, 2 painters, and then thrown across and split off into 3 and 4. And those painters are connected to these pipes too. And we haven't used any additional inputs because we're still well within our limits here. These bottom 4 receivers have the capacity to feed another 8 painters on the right here, which we'll jump to in just a second. So as you notice, it's still only on the first level here. Now, moving on to our third island to the right here, we've now got 16 painters here, all on the first level, and we've got a single paint pipe running all the way across the middle here, feeding most of our painters, and any others that are not being directly fed by the pipe are connected up to other paint machines. So we've got the third belt coming in here, jumping across twice into these 2 painters, and also going through these 2 and then being jumped across again down here, and then they're all coming back together and exiting through that third slot. And lastly, that last belt using these two painters here and being jumped across to come out, and then also coming down the side to be painted here and being jumped to be painted here as well, and coming back in, connecting up and coming up again. So that's the basic one level design of this platform. So we've got all 4 belts connected up to 4 painters, and then the paint receivers on the left hand side all connected by this one pipe and being fed through to the rest of the painters like so. The benefit of this design is that it's all on the one level, which means if we simply select all of this and copy it, we can then elevate it and paste it onto the second level, and suddenly we've doubled our output. And that's what we'll find on this next island here. We've simply copied this design and pasted it on top, and then of course for this next island to the right, we've just done that again and pasted that on the 3rd level. So it looks quite condensed and compact. And if you guys don't have the desire to build this yourself and follow along with these steps, I'd be happy to include the blueprint into the description of this video so that you guys can simply download it and use it yourself if you desire. So that takes care of this painting blueprint island, which will now save into our hexagonal platforms folder titled simply paint 16 belts, into here and save, and then I'll just get rid of all of that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, after about an hour off camera designing and redesigning a simple cutter, if you've been following along with the series, you remember already that we have a cutter that divides a shape into its 2 separate halves. So let's first have a look at that again. So this is what we've designed previously, and it works well. We get a full shape into the 1st level, and it's then divided into its 2 outputs, as you can see, the left hand side and the right hand side. Beautiful. The downside to this design, however, is similar to our previous painting design, where we are already using the 2nd level to route the right hand side of the shape over to the right hand side output. That is a big no-no if we want to copy and paste this design and replace it onto the 2nd and 3rd level, because obviously we cannot do that without significant collision. So in light of wanting to triple our output and make use of all 3 levels of the input, see, we have all these extra shapes waiting for us that we are not currently using with this old design. I've gone ahead and redesigned the cutter, and I'll take you guys through step by step so you can follow along. And same with the painting design. If you would prefer simply to reuse the blueprint, I'll include that also in the video description. But just to reiterate, this is our old design that works, but only for the first level. Now let's come across here, and this is the start of our new design. Now we have a full belt that I've decided to divide in two, and the reason for that is because I want to work on a 1x1 platform, and that's simply too small to have 16 cutters in here. It's either not going to work, or my brain's too small to make it work. So we'll just leave it like that. We'll leave it there for the big pros to potentially, they could have already worked this out, of course, but we wanted to do it ourselves. I wanted to do it myself and exercise my noggin. So because we've split it up into two, now each belt that we take from is only going to be running at 50% capacity, and the significance of that is we're only going to need 2 cutters per belt instead of 4, and once we've designed this first island on the left, we can simply replicate that same design onto a second island on the right, and we'll end up using one full saturated belt just on 2 separate islands. So that's the logic behind that. So moving on, we have one belt split into 2 separate cutters, and as you can see, the left hand side of the shape here is being connected back onto the one belt unnecessarily blown across here, I think. Don't believe that's important, but we'll keep that as is just in case I'm wrong. And then rerouted back out into the bottom left quadrant here. And the right hand side of the shape is being jumped over. Importantly, we are not using the second level at all. We're simply using the belt launchers and catches so that we remain on the first level, and then that is being routed all the way to the right hand side output. That may look a little bit odd, but there is a good reason for this, which will be revealed very shortly. So that's one belt complete. And because this design is being replicated on the right, what we want to do is similar to our original design. We want the left hand side of the shape to be outputted on a different belt. So similarly, once we're finished, we want the left on the left, the right on the right. And we've added these extra platforms in for simple routing so that we can easily organize our shapes and future-proof this design. Because we are currently working with a full shape, it is easy for us to simply rotate that after it's been cut and then recombine it into the same belt. However, that may not always be the case. We may have a shape that we want to separate. So in order to design with some foresight, we've decided to go with this option. So the left-hand shape just continues straight routing through the second platform all the way down to the end, and it's a fairly simple movement. And for the right hand side of the shape, I've routed it to the right and then across, and do a little jump here, and this is important, and then route it down to the exit here. So that's belt 1. Now, just in case any of you were wondering, I didn't start any of this routing until I had completed this first island. I'm just showing you guys ahead of time. That's the line that it ends up taking. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next stage of this design. And this island here is now using all 4 belts. And importantly, we are recombining these 4 cutters together onto the one belt, and then funneling that through onto the far left, and then these other 4 cutters, the left hand side of each of these is being combined across, jumped over, and it exits out second from the left. And of course, the right hand side of each of these outputs is being jumped across and combined, and it ends up exiting on the far right, and the same is true for the remainder of the 4 cutters, combining here into the one belt and then thrown out second from the right. So the left hand side shapes are simply being routed straight, and the right hand side shapes are taking a trip over across, so that they then eventually end up on this right space belt. So this design to our right is just a carbon copy of that one, and just simply copied and pasted it over. And now we see the right hand side of the shape gets routed straight down, and the left hand side of the shape is now routed to the left. So you see how these are both symmetrical. And these two are not exactly symmetrical if we were to divide the design down the middle, but they are very similar. There's just a straight copy. Now we have the left hand side of the shapes being routed through here, and this is the middle island that acts as a connecting piece. So we're jumping the left hand shapes over the top of the right hand shapes and vice versa. And if I just extend these space belts, you guys will be able to see it in action. So thankfully the design does not collide, and we're able to, let's just continue that on. So it runs a little bit longer. They don't collide, but they jump straight over one another, and that way we're able to keep this design nice and symmetrical looking. So the rights go across, and it funnel down, and same with the left. So we're now left with a nice and even output. And it's all organised beautifully. Let's get rid of that excess. So that's the basic design of this cutter and divider project. The main benefit of this is that because we've all kept it on the single level, it was a bit of a pain to initially create. We are now able to easily triple our output by copying this whole thing like so and just pasting it onto the second and third level. And now we're able to use all three of those space belt levels, and as you can see, the machine is working wonderfully. Now able to process all of the levels at once without any interference. And that here is our final design. This is 3 levels already in place, and this conveniently producing for us 12 fully saturated belts of each of the halves here. Coming from one fully saturated belt, that is either coming out of a train unloader, which is what we'll be using, or in this example case, from 12 miners with that equal distribution that we set up earlier. And I'm hoping that it's obvious to anybody still watching that this design is important for our Milestone 5, where we need these shapes both painted and cut in half. So let's go ahead and save this final design with the inputs included, because that does always need to be split. And we'll save this as a half separator, and of course under platforms here. Perfect. So that is that part of our Milestone 5 organized. Now let me just do some brainstorming, do what I'd like to work on next before we start putting it all together. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've given it some thought, and then I've made a new design, and the stage that I was working on next is this stage here. Now, I haven't yet completed the design, but I have done the first part of 2 in designing this shape. So, as some of you may remember, we have already built a design that creates this shape, and we used it in one of these previous tasks here to create the toxic blooming. However, there was, or now is, a problem with that previous design, and I'll show you guys that now. So this was saved in our blueprint. We've got a full shape coming in here, and we're using that cutter to divide it into its separate components, and then we're rotating it before sending it into separate platforms, where we are then cutting it again and leaving us with a single triangle piece and then a 2-piece triangle part, which would then rotate again and cut a third time, leaving us with 3 separate triangles. And that was the first part of our solution, and that was done like so. The downside, as we've previously highlighted in our other designs, is that this uses platforms, not these ones here, but over here, designed with the second level, which means this would only work for the first level of our belted shapes. So this first blueprint is cut off here. So that simply takes a full shape and divides it. I'll get rid of this, don't need that. Divides it into its 6 separate components and orientates it into the top left. Now I've changed slightly my preference, and I now prefer to put shapes in the orientation of top right, and the reason for that is because when you see this the shape code here, it starts off by mentioning the shape in the top right, and then it mentions the next shape along in a clockwise motion. So I want to be designing my designs with that in mind, just for ease of structure and following along. So that's our old design. Now I'll bring you guys to the new one where we've gotten this far, and I've broken it down into 2 stages to help you guys to follow along. Now here we are. This design uses the one we've just previously made by cutting the shape in half. So I've got the full stack of 12 belts coming in, and then we're dividing that in 2, and then making use of that previous design that we've recently covered and dividing that into the left and right components. As you can see here, I've got the left hand shape, and then if I had removed that, you would have the right hand shape, but we've replaced that with a 180-degree rotator, and that is now orientating the right hand shape to be the same orientation as the left hand shape. Now you would notice that I have not yet stacked this into all 3 levels, which I will do shortly, and replace the previous blueprint here. So we have the 180 rotator, but this is currently only producing the first level. What I'll go through and do is I'll replace at least the rotators, because that's easy to do, with the 3-level variant, but I won't do that just yet. So just pretend that this has 3 levels. So we're producing all 3 here. So that's a 180 rotation. This is a 60-degree rotation clockwise, and this platform is the same. Now these 2 belts are currently at full capacity, and they are then being split off again, and we're simply reusing the design a second and third time and placing it here and here as well. You see it's just currently a mirror image of itself, both to the left and to the right. And because we're splitting them, cutting it again, we now have 4 full capacity belts, with the middle 2 being a single triangle and the outside 2, unfortunately you can't currently see it, but they each have 2 of the triangles still attached to one another. They are then being rotated again. Let's see if I can't get the visuals up for you guys. There we go, that's starting to come through. So these 2 still have 2 triangles each. They're coming through these additional rotating platforms. And they're coming out now in this orientation, ready to be cut for a 3rd time. So as we can see, we're just reusing the design once again to cut a final time on each of these outside double triangles, and then finishing up with 6 separate full lanes of the single triangle, and capping off by rotating that just 60 degrees clockwise, so they are now all in the same position, ready to be manipulated at our leisure. So these should all be full capacity belts. Because I haven't added the extra levels on these rotators, we do only have the first level of each of these belts, but I'll go ahead and change that soon. But before I do this, I've designed this in such a way so it's easy to see with these shapes coming along with the lines here, but we can easily condense this so it doesn't take up too much space. It's very long at the moment. So let's jump ahead over here, and this is doing the exact same thing, just to be clear, except it's now shorter. So I've just removed any unnecessary belt and just condensed it. You see we have the same output there. And that's the 2 side by side, so we've saved ourselves a good 4 tiles in height. Now let me go ahead and I'll resave these rotation platform blueprints with the extra levels attached, and I'll meet back with you guys very soon. There we are, I've just finished replacing those blueprints, so all 6 of our rotating blueprints, should I say 5? I think I've duplicated one here. Yeah, or it shouldn't exist anymore. All 5 of our rotated blueprints have now been edited to include all 3 levels here, so we won't make that mistake again. Perfect. Now I'll go ahead and try and design the second portion of that milestone, where we're now reconnecting 3 of the 6 individual segments and combining them into this pattern here, ideally using just the 1 level, which is likely to include the swapper building rather than the stacker. And I'll get back to you guys once I've completed that. While I remember, let's go ahead and save this first half of our design by highlighting all of this and saving that. I went ahead and named it separate full as in full shape to 6 as in 6 parts, and then 12 belts, and put that under hexagonal platforms. Now I'll go ahead and design the next portion. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've just finished off the next portion of this design. Now, this particular part is not future-proof in the sense that it doesn't use each of the 6 pieces together. It simply takes from one line and creates the shape that we are currently after in just the single line itself. So I'll show you guys what I mean. So if we come in here, we've got one belt. This is just the beginning of the design. One belt split into 5 lanes. Now the first lane and the third lane remain in the same orientation and they connect to swappers. And then the second and the fourth lane have included 2 rotators, 60 degrees counterclockwise each, so that the triangle is now on the far left. And that right hand triangle is then being brought across. And the same thing over here, that right hand triangle is being brought across. So the left hand side outputs 2 of those triangles combined, and the right hand side outputs nothing. But because of space, we've connected it all together with the belt here. So that's 4 of the 5 lanes done. The 5th lane gets routed down here and rotated once 60 degrees clockwise, and then routed back up to join the rest of the shape that's been built. And this shape, after coming out of the swappers, is then rotated 60 degrees counterclockwise, ready to be swapped with that last portion of the grey triangle, which is then combined into this shape that we're after. And then that simply gets routed down the edge of the island and out the bottom here. Now, importantly to note, this belt is fully saturated, but we are using this one piece 3 times and combining it once and twice, which means this end result is now really only sitting at 1/3 capacity. I hope that makes sense. Perhaps I can explain it a bit better later on. In any case, we've got the shape that we've wanted, and that's our design for one belt. Now, it wasn't quite able to simply be copied and pasted, because that then now collides with the end of that belt. So I've designed it slightly differently for the second belt, which you can see here. So most of it's exactly the same, but for that last section here, we've got it rotated and then coming back up to then be combined again down the bottom. So exactly the same thing that's happening, just positioned a little bit differently for that second belt. And that is coming across. And although that looks connected, and it is connected, nothing is actually being outputted on the left hand side of that swapper. That shape being belted in from the left is then being transferred to the right to complete that shape there being outputted. So now that we've got a design that is completely on the left hand side, it's simply a matter of copying that, rotating it and flipping it and adding that in to the right hand side here, which is what we've done on this platform. Now outputting 4 lanes of that completed shape. And of course, because we've avoided using any second level shenanigans like so, we can simply copy this whole design and go up like so, which will then also mean that we can make use of level 2 and 3, which is what I've already done over here. So there we have 16 lanes of the shape coming out. Again, although it looks full, it should now only be at 33% capacity, or 1/3 of its full capacity for each of these, which is not a big drama because we can do this 6 times, because this simple design here is connected up to our previous blueprint here. So we have 6 full lanes of the individual parts. Now we obviously don't want these half-made designs, we want that full-made design, and we want that on every single output here. And from there, because these are only at 33% capacity, we can simply connect these all up to the one space belt, and then the same thing can be done on this right hand side, which would then leave us with 2 full capacity belts of the completed shape, as you can see here. And just to illustrate my point, you see here how this is far from a full belt. The full belt is here, and then the end result only at about 38 per meter. Now that that design is complete, we can go ahead and select all of this and click save. Combiner 6 to 3 with gaps. Version 2. I'll also go ahead and select just that single platform here and save that as a blueprint as well. And name that like so. And that's just for the single platform. Wonderful. Now, that's the second part of that milestone now complete. And it looks like the last one is simply combining multiple together. Let's go ahead and move our camera. And think about the next step. Okay. Why don't we go ahead and start getting this milestone 5 completed using the train setup that we have done earlier in this video. This recording is getting quite large, so let's see if we can't try and start to wrap this up. So I'll go ahead and select the half separator using 12 belts and connect that up to we want in both the second and the third shape. So let's give ourselves a little bit of room here and belt these in like so. And now we have already created our 16 belt painter as well, so we can easily use that to paint these half shapes too. I'll just put that to the side for now. And we want both the red and the blue color. You can watch the unloader slowly get rid of the crate that was initially put in there by the train, and it's now using the belt to distribute the shapes that we need. Can have a look and see which side is which. I've just realized though, of course, it's going to be more efficient if we do that later. So let's put this over here for now. And what we really want to be doing is coloring the full shape before we start manipulating it at all. And that way we're not wasting a lot of our paint by coloring first one half of the shape and then the other. So in light of that, let's bring this down here and bring this red across here. And yes, we want that shape red. Let's grab the painter, throw that in like so. So we then should be producing that here, and then we'll do the same thing a little way across here with the blue. Bring that across and use our tunnel and connect that up. And connect up that shape as well. There we see we have a fully painted hexagonal shape here, which we can then split in half. So we'll get those designs, and then do the cutting for each of these. Now we won't bother reorientating any of these just yet, as that doesn't matter when we input them into the hub. So we'll just simply go ahead and belt all of this in to the hub like so. And those numbers, once we hit the hub, should go up very quickly indeed. We'll have a look, we're already out of our paints coming through here. because those islands are so well designed, they're really chewing through the paint. We may need to add some extra trains to our line eventually. For now, let's enjoy the incredible speeds in which we're able to produce these milestone shapes. We've got 12, but 16 of each of these shapes here currently being funneled in. It's a very satisfying experience. It's wonderful. Yeah. Looks like it's going to last a good amount of time. Looks like all of these belts are still full. Fantastic. We can cut that off now because we're going to be well past necessary limit. And it's likely that we could cut this off as well. Now we're still going to need these outputs, so we won't cut off the paint or the shapes. But we can have a quick look at what's next required. Perfect. That second one is now complete as well. So let's get rid of these. That was incredibly quick. Okay, so using our previous blueprint, we can now simply add on to this section here. Just need to remember what we called it. So we see here it's called separate full to 6, 12 belts. We've selected that, except we don't need this whole blueprint. If we position it like so, we are already at this stage here. So all we really need is the bottom half of this blueprint, I believe. So let's cut that and paste it in and see what shape we get at the end of this. No, that doesn't look quite right. And that would be because the orientation is off, so let's revert that. And have a quick think. So I think instead what we want to do is we'd like to grab from here and then copy and paste it twice. So if we throw up that, copy, oh, we're out of room, oh dear. That is unfortunate. Turns out we didn't give ourselves enough room after all. But that's okay, we can manage. So let's cut that and add it both to the right and to the left. Get rid of those for now. And just connect these across. Apologies for the mess. Bring that down. And that down as well. So if all of this works out as planned, we should end up with everything separated into 6 individual pieces. And with that in mind, we can go ahead and use our second blueprint to recombine it in the pattern that we desire. And here we have the blueprint here. Combine a 6:3 with gaps version 2. That should neatly fit on to the end of this blueprint, and the same on this end. And with any luck, all we'll need to do now is build the final product back into a hub. So once we've done all the hard work of designing these blueprints, it's simply a matter of connecting them together, like a big jigsaw puzzle. Now I'll pause that for a minute while the shapes flow through, and we'll have a look at what the end result is. Now we can see these belts are filling up. Let's have a look at our hub. Now, unfortunately, none of these are full anymore, but we're still delivering a good amount of shapes here. We'll let that run for a little while we admire our monstrosity. So that's the snapshot of what we've got going on. Belting the shapes and parking the paint. Cutting it in half. And then further separating it before recombining it right at the bottom here. And the same thing happening on the left. And it looks like our shape trains are able to keep up with the demand, so that's good. And I'm a little bit concerned about our colours. As I said previously, we might need to add another train or two, depending on whether our extractors can handle it. That third train still looks full, so that's good. Let's have a look at our stations. Yeah, it already has 3 crates ready to go. So we can easily, I think, add another 2 trains without needing to touch any more pumps. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll select that train, copy, press F, and paste twice, and connect those up as well. And now all of a sudden we have another 2 trains keen to deliver more paint. So that should keep ourselves well saturated. So that's finished now. Let's press H to go to our hub. It'll snap us back here. And we want to pause this shape creation while we work on how to combine these all together. That's the last shape that we're after. Okay, first let's go ahead and remove these belts. Now, having a quick look at that shape here, one of these belts is in the correct orientation for the bottom segment of that red portion, but for the top section we'll need to rotate one of these belts either 60 degrees clockwise or counterclockwise. So let's go ahead and do that now. for the blue shape, we want that rotated the same, either clockwise or counterclockwise. Once. And we'll only need one line of this blue compared to the two lines of this red. So in order to stop this from potentially jamming, I'm going to combine these two lines. And that way, if this runs out, it won't shut down the right hand side of this factory because this one has nowhere to go. Now, because this is turning into such a long recording, I'm going to be a little bit cheeky here, and I'm going to use a previous blueprint that I've used in the distant past. Now, I doubt this was made by me, I'm almost certain it wasn't, but we have here a stacker that is able to use an incredible amount of input. I believe it takes 24 belts and converts it into 12. So I'll just place this here. So the input comes in from the left and right, as you can see here. So 12 belts from the left, 12 belts from the right, and outputs 12 belts. If you just place it without rotating it. It'll place it in the south orientation, but because our hub is up, we've rotated it along. So I'll just quickly show you guys, that's not necessary, but it's there for some reason. Where this blueprint is using the bent stackers, and I'll just leave this screen briefly on for each level. You guys can pause the video if you like and get a good look. I'll also be putting this blueprint in the description. I don't have the brain power to design anything like that. Such a compact version is quite incredible. I believe this was designed by somebody else. There we go. So that's the design. My apologies for not being able to go through it step by step. Let's go ahead and use it. So let's take that space belt and throw it into the right hand side, and we'll take the bottom red shape that we require and throw that into the left hand side, and that should then produce that bottom shape without the top currently attached. And then after that we can use the same blueprint of the stacker again and throw that just a little bit further down and connect that up. Ooh. Now it's important to note which side is which. So the right hand side it's not actually going to be accurate because it's opposite way. So the right hand side is going down. you see it's being thrown across and then down. So the right hand side is the bottom shape. Good to know. But because this has been rotated, the right hand side is in this orientation, the top shape, which is a little bit inconvenient for us because our top shape is on the left hand side currently. So an easy fix for this is to simply delete that and use it instead in this orientation, cutting that and pasting it up here. And then we can simply belt the shape across and attach this to the right, and that right being the bottom shape. If you look closely, we can see the left. It's coming out and putting it on top of all of these stackers, with the right going underneath. Go ahead and belt that across, and then finally belting the end result into our hub. Now let's zoom in on the stacker here. I'm not sure if having this full of shapes is going to be much help. There's so much going on, it's hard for me to understand. But it seems to be working well. And we now have that final shape being made with the same platform again. At lightning speed. It's beautiful. We've got 12 hole belts coming in here. 12 needed belts because we have 30k on this Milestone 5 to produce. Hence all the trains, hence all this trouble with the new blueprints, with the 3 levels included. If we had just stuck to the 1, that would have taken us a very long time indeed to complete. But now it should be complete in just a matter of minutes, which I won't bore you guys with having to wait through. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, a 2-hour video just getting through Milestone 5, most of which was creating a simple train network. You can see now that we're starting to get a little bit of a backup of our paints with the added 2 extra trains. We also have our shapes that are doing just fine. And this massive blueprint here that we're making good use of. Well, that just about wraps it up for us for this session. Thank you to anyone who is stuck around for the entire vid. Hope it hasn't been too much to take in. I know even recording this I took a couple of breaks at least. Requires a lot of my brain power to do any sort of designing like that. And if all of this doesn't really sink in the first time, please don't feel bad at all, because there is definitely a lot to wrap your head around. And I've done most of this multiple times in the past, albeit not with the hexagonal shapes, but a lot of the same concepts are very similar. Okay, without further ado, I'm gonna say goodbye. I hope you guys have a blessed week. Bye for now.